Okay, the hour of 7:30 has arrived. I'd like to call to order this study session of District 116 for December 5th, 2017. Roll call, please.
Member Hall?
Here.
Member Pulaski?
Here.
Vice President Rollins-Gay?
Here.
Member Patton?
Here.
Member Carter is here. President Demmett?
Here. Quorum is present. Do we have any additions, corrections, or modifications to this evening's agenda?
Yes, we have one thing that was inadvertently left off the agenda that was sent out. It's not an action item, but one of our study topics is the School-Based Health Center. The director of Urbana School-Based Health Center, Jenny Dobb, will be presenting on 9.01 tonight.
Okay. Any citizen statements this evening? If there's any citizen that wishes to address the board, please just submit a goldenrod sheet. Seeing none, Lori Johnson is doing double duty tonight, running the camera for us, so thank you, Lori, for doing that in addition to serving as a recording secretary. I see no citizen statements. We have no call for exec session tonight. A motion to approve the agenda would be in order.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. First, administrative briefing and report is a report on a trip to Spain. Life's tough.
Yeah.
If you remember, earlier this fall, as part of my superintendent's report, we talked about Dr. Wiemelt being asked by the U.S. Department of State to travel to Spain as a special English language educator and specialist to help Spain with issues of bilingualism and dual language. So he is freshly back, and thought we'd give a short report to the board. So Lori, could you get the lights too?
So good evening, and thank you for having me this evening. Thank you, Dr. Owen and the Board of Education. As Dr. Owen mentioned, I actually returned on the 25th of November, the day after Thanksgiving. So I've been back for just over a week. I think I'm over my jet lag and all of those, the aspects of traveling across time zones. They say it's a day for every hour. I think it was true for me this time. It took me a full week to recover, especially at night. So as Dr. Owen, I have a short presentation that prepared for you that I believe you have as a printout, but also here online as a PowerPoint. The English language program is a program run in collaboration across the U.S. Department of U.S. Department of State, the Public Diplomacy Initiative, the Foreign Affairs Office, and English language education across the world, where American embassies are housed in different countries. And so they have the English language program is the umbrella program, and they have two sub-programs underneath that. One is the English language fellows, and one is the English language specialists. The real main difference between the two is the length of time that you are assigned. So the fellows are long-term projects, anywhere from 6 months to 2 years, and the specialists are anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 months. And so about a year and a half ago, I submitted my interest in being an English language specialist under this program, assuming or hoping for future opportunities to spend a week to 2 weeks somewhere working in bilingual education, strengthening my knowledge, my expertise as it relates to bilingualism from another country's perspective. And a year later, I got the email and the contact about an opportunity in Spain. I had forgotten about the program by that point, but I was excited to get the email with my experience in Spanish-speaking countries already, and my experience in Spain with our visiting teachers program that we participated in a few years ago. I was excited to get that offer. So real quickly, it's a program that's funded in collaboration between the Department of State, the Office of English Language Programs, and the Bureau. And it's administered by Georgetown University, a center out of Georgetown. So I've been working with Georgetown University officials at their Center for Intercultural Education and Development and the embassy in Madrid, Spain, and the different folks, the two people specifically in the embassy in Madrid. One is a specialist that works with these types of programs, English language development programs in Spain, and a U.S. diplomat who's been there this is his second of 3 years, who's there just as a cultural liaison between the U.S. and Spain. And so the assignments, as I mentioned, are short term. They're very intense, so I'll talk a little bit about what my experience was in the next couple slides. But it builds upon the participant specialization, areas of expertise, and the desires or needs that the partner countries are looking for. So southern Spain, the community, if you're familiar with Spain at all, they have 9 autonomous communities, which we don't really have in the U.S., an equivalent. It's kind of like regions, so the Midwest, Northeast. But if you imagine that the Midwest and Northeast of the United States had their own government for those regions, that's how it operates in Spain. And then within those autonomous communities, they have provinces, which are like our states, but the provinces aren't, they don't have their own governments. So it's a little different, it's a little nuanced. So my assignment that I was asked to participate in was in Andalusia, which is the southern part of Spain that includes Sevilla, Cadiz, Malaga, Granada, and Cordoba, which are pretty locations, as you'll see in a few spots. It's a little bit more tropical. I've only ever been to Madrid or northern Spain, which it feels very European and not tropical. But in southern Spain, it's a mixture of what I feel like is kind of the Caribbean feel with the traditional European architecture. So it was a beautiful area. They were looking specifically, the project was entitled Teacher Training Workshops on Oral English Language Skills in the community, the autonomous community of Andalusia, Spain. They were really interested in furthering and developing their bilingual education across the country. This is the last, they've had someone come over the past several years to different communities in Spain, and Andalusia is the last community that they're bringing someone to. And they're really, as a country in Spain, trying to further develop their bilingual education countrywide. So from a policy standpoint, it's pretty impressive, which I'll share a little bit more at the end. Much more impressive than we do as a United States in terms of policy as it relates to bilingual education. In the States, we're much more state-driven and even locally driven. We don't, on a broader scale, have a very robust bilingual education program as a country. Just individual pockets like Urbana, School District 116. So as you can see, my first week was in Sevilla, my second week in Cadiz, and my third week in Malaga. So Cadiz is, or excuse me, Sevilla is the capital city of Andalusia, and that was my first week. I spent 4 days a week with teachers for 4-hour workshops per day, where we did your typical workshop model of English language development through project-based learning, cooperative-based learning, really pulling from a lot of the work that we're doing here in Urbana, used a lot of experiences that I've had here, as well as background information and anecdotal experiences that I have working in bilingual education here. The second week was in Cadiz, which was a coastal city, and the third week in Malaga, which is also a coastal city, like 40 miles from Morocco, maybe 50 or 60 miles, somewhere in there. You can almost see Morocco across the bay from that last city I was in. In addition to the teachers I was working with, I also worked with what's called English language assistants, or they call them auxiliaries. And the country has an initiative where they're bringing in native English-speaking employees to be assistants, classroom assistants, in their bilingual schools to provide native language models for their students. And those are individuals from the United States, Canada, Great Britain, Australia, New Zealand, etc. And so I was able to work with these auxiliaries in the 3 different cities as well, with one-day workshops with them, which was pretty fascinating to work with folks from Scotland, Australia, New Zealand, the US, to talk about what it's like to be working in classrooms in Spain. Many of them not educators, not going into education. They're just there as an experience for their kind of gap years between when they graduated college and before they go into their field. Some of them were educators, and I gave them my cards to try to encourage them to go into education here. As well as English schools, English bilingual schools I visited in each of the 3 areas. Elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools. The middle school and high schools are combined into one school in Spain. They're not separate schools. And I also worked with policymakers to discuss broader bilingual education policy in Spain and the possibility of exchange programs for students and staff with the states, but specifically starting in Urbana or Illinois, which I'll talk about in just a moment. So the focus of the workshops I've already mentioned, it was basically a combination of theoretical and practical strategies, pulling on what we're learning about anecdotally and practically from bilingual education here in the States and here in Urbana School District specifically. The big difference is in Spain, the majority of their students in Spanish schools are monolingual Spanish speakers upon arrival to school, the overwhelming majority. They do have a small and growing immigrant community, second language learning community in Spain, students who are learning Spanish as a second language, but the majority of students speak Spanish when they come to school. So their bilingual education approach and thinking is for Spanish-speaking students to acquire English and possibly French and German. And so it's more of a foreign language immersion model that they're implementing across the country. Although we did talk a lot about serving immigrant students in Spain and what that looks like and how it's similar and different to the United States. So a lot of what I was learning more about was initiatives to ensure that more Spanish students, Spaniard students, are becoming bilingual, which before going to Spain, I had a misconception that most Spanish folks were bilingual, multilingual, this idea of the European Union and most folks are multilingual, which is probably true when you go further east in Europe, not so much on the west side in Portugal and Spain as much, based on what I learned during my time there. So, but they're trying to change that. So on average, I think around 70 to 80% of their schools are now bilingual schools across the country of Spain, which is pretty impressive. So a couple pictures, a few pictures at each location. So top right is the Plaza de España. So if there's any Star Wars fans in here, this is where they filmed episode 2. I was geeking out at that moment. My sons were very jealous of me. But the bottom left is I'm working with English language assistants. So those are the folks from English-speaking countries that are there on one-year contracts. The bottom right is the university, the International University in Sevilla. And that's where they held the workshops for teachers that week in Sevilla. A few more pictures. The top right is an elementary school in Spain, and it's connected to a church, although it's not a private church-based school. It's just housed on the campus of a church. You can see recess in the bottom right, the traditional kind of Spanish European feel, and the streets and the buildings. And then the left is a classroom of I believe that was first grade classroom. They were studying the parts of the body. So one of their main initiatives with English language development is through the sciences. So this is an area of critique right now, of question in Spain, is that students are learning science in English from kindergarten through high school. And they're wrestling with if that's the best approach or not. So they have English classes and they have science classes in English, and the rest of the day is in Spanish. And so that was their original rollout as a country. And so we've learned in our program is here in Urbana is to be more fluid with which subjects you're using and teaching in English or Spanish and how that changes over time. So students learn multiple subjects in both languages. I think in comparison, Urbana school districts bilingual program, dual language programs are further along than the broader implementation of bilingual education in Spain. But I could see ourselves 10 years ago while I was there in Spain, which is but again, they're doing it countrywide, not one school district or one school. Cadiz, so there's a few more pictures. Cadiz, as I mentioned, was on the coast and the beach, and they actually refer to Cadiz as Havana, Cuba, and San Juan, Puerto Rico are very similar to Cadiz. A lot of the architecture is similar. And historically, there's some connections between southern Spain and the Caribbean. The left-hand picture is a high school that I presented to high school students in I forgot to mention that earlier. I presented American life, what's it like to be an American high school student, to high schoolers in Spain, which was fascinating, the questions I got from high schoolers in Spain. This particular group in Cadiz, you had your typical questions that you would expect. I had lots of political questions as it relates to President Trump, as it relates to different initiatives right now, different policy issues that are going on. And I was quite impressed with some of the students' questions from Spain that was pretty pointed questions, put me on the spot I wasn't expecting. But it was good. The top right is working with the English language assistants in Cadiz as well. So it was a big group. And then the third week was Malaga. I'd have to say this is my favorite city of Spain that I've been to yet. I just love it. So the downtown area is very historical and beautiful. And then the top right and bottom right am I working with Spanish teachers in the workshop model that we were doing for project-based learning. I did get to go up to, this is a general picture of Malaga. This is why I love Malaga as my favorite city. It has mountains, ocean, and the downtown area, the traditional European feel, all in one place. And it's actually a pretty international community. A lot of people across Europe go there to retire. And I actually spent Thanksgiving in this city, and I went to an American club lunch, Thanksgiving meal, where we had turkey and the whole deal, which was pretty interesting. There weren't very many Americans there for it being an American club, but it was a pretty good Thanksgiving meal for not being in the States. And then I did go and visit Granada, the Sierra Mountains and beautiful area. So it was a wonderful opportunity to be in Spain working, thinking about bilingual education, working with teachers and administrators, policymakers in Spain, and thinking about the way in which we can collaborate as Urbana School District and the Spanish government, as well as possible opportunities for other collaborations with other countries in the future. I would love to see this type of collaboration with Mexico, the Caribbean, Latin America, South America, et cetera. A couple highlights, and then this is my last slide. So very impressed with their broad commitment to bilingualism as a country. Stronger commitment as a country than I see in the States. Policymakers and administrators and teachers are very passionate about their preparation of the future in Spain. They really view bilingualism, multilingualism as a major initiative for their country, for the 21st century. But they're also similarly challenged by myths and misconceptions around bilingualism, bilingual education, and they're struggling as much as we are with fitting bilingual education approaches into monolingual education accountability systems, which we still struggle with. We collectively as a country, I'm saying, not necessarily Urbana, although we struggle with that as well. So I can go into any more of this with questions, comments, or thoughts that you have about this experience, but it's very much a mutually beneficial opportunity. I'm very thankful to the Board of Education and District Administration for allowing me the opportunity to go during the school year. I was assuming these opportunities would be in the summers, where school wasn't in session, but I didn't want to pass up on this opportunity, so I appreciate the support from my supervisors. And I view this as an opportunity to continue to strengthen our bilingual programs here in Spanish, but also in other languages as we move forward. So there is the U.S. Embassy in Madrid, in Spain, is highlighting some of this work, and I have a end of project report that's due within the next 15 days that I need to get working on. And they'll be continuing to update their website on the U.S. Embassy and their social media platform. So with that, I will finish. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'll take any questions you may have.
Questions?
Yeah, thank you, Joe, for representing our district so well. Will your relationship with this particular group continue, or, I mean, once your report is over, I mean, will there be relationship?
Yes,
Continue.
yeah, possibly. So the way all of the embassies across the world have the opportunity to submit project requests to their embassies. So it's the Ministries of Education submit requests to their embassies, and then the embassies work with Georgetown to find matches, to find specialists or fellows to fulfill the job, fulfill the project. And so I'm in the database to be a specialist, and so there could be future opportunities if the timing is right and it's the right opportunity to strengthen what we're doing here as well. But it could be anywhere. It could be Asia, South America, Europe, Africa. It's worldwide.
Not necessarily a Spanish-speaking
Right,
country.
right.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Right.
Great, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So, Joe, do they get complications because of the different regions speak dialects that are very, very different from standard? I'm thinking of like Catalonia. And
Well, Catalonia right now politically is in interesting times, to say the least. So every morning, all day, the 24-hour news cycle was primarily about Catalonia and the challenge that they're facing around whether or not trying to separate from Spain.
Right.
Part of that is in relation to language, history, issues of race and culture, and historically how that has played out. And so there are some, what's interesting, and I think it's pretty similar to most countries, but definitely the U.S., there are different regions in Spain, and maybe even stronger in Spain, are very, very proud and fight for their regions, their communities as being, wanting to uphold and maintain who they are in their particular regions. They identify very differently across the different regions in Spain. And so I think what I know in working with some of the teachers we've had here, one from Barcelona, that Catalan is very much Catalan Spanish bilingual programs exist in Catalonia, and they have to, in many ways, keep fighting to maintain those programs or to build those programs. But now they're becoming trilingual schools with Catalan, Spanish, and English, or whatever the third language may be. In Barcelona, a lot of people are studying French with its proximity to France. But I don't know really kind of details about the way in which those different dialects or language varieties in Spain
I just
are
wondered,
playing
because
out.
that could make a national approach fairly
difficult. Yeah.
difficult, when
Yeah.
you don't have everybody in the country speaking the same language
Yeah.
as their
Well,
primary language.
I believe, well, yeah, primary language is the question. I'm not sure about the answer. I know that all schools across all the regions are teaching in Spanish, but in terms of primary language, that is a good question that I don't have a
Okay.
good answer for. But southern Spain, I think, is probably the one, at least a community, it's the most populous community in all of Spain, as well as there are no regional dialects or language varieties in southern Spain. It's all Spanish. Although it's a nuanced Spanish. It's we would consider southern English. They would consider southern Spanish and southern Spain Spanish. It's very different than northern Spain or Madrid or Barcelona. So
All right.
it actually resembles the Caribbean a lot.
Huh.
And historically, there's a connection with southern Spain through the history of colonization, and the early Spaniards who came to the Americas primarily came from southern Spain. And so a lot of the language varieties that you hear in the Caribbean, if anyone's familiar with Spanish, it's faster, and the S isn't pronounced as in the same way as in other areas, and that's how it is in southern Spain. The S is kind of cut off or soft, and it's similar. I would love to talk. I love talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
language, so
All right.
I can wrap up.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I
I'm
do.
sorry,
I have a
Nancy.
couple.
Go ahead.
I wanted to know if you learned why their approach was to use science as their one subject that they made I mean, that to me seems counterintuitive because the concepts are, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, that's what they're struggling with, and that's what we used to do, really, in Urbana. We chose science for English language learners to be in English and other subjects in Spanish, and the intention behind that is that science can be very hands-on, and there are a lot of linguistic similarities between Spanish and English as it relates to science, science vocabulary, cognates, et cetera. So the intent is to ensure, and it's also, for some folks, at least in the U.S., it's not anymore one of those areas that's tested through high-stakes testing early on, and so it's viewed as, sometimes math is viewed as you need to teach math in the native language. So in Spain in Spanish, in the U.S. in English, because it's what's tested and it's in the language it's tested in. So it varies based on the approach, but oftentimes science is used because it's hands-on and you can attach language to those hands-on activities, whereas reading and social studies tend to be more just linguistic and not as hands-on, although the best history teachers are very hands-on teachers, right? And lots of visuals and documentations, as I see all the history teachers in this room. But they're questioning that now, and we've questioned that in the States as well, as to, it's not so much which subject should be in English, it's how are you teaching all subjects across the two languages over the course of their experience. And that's what policymakers and teachers are now wrestling with in Spain, from my experience there. So.
Okay. And I just had one other question, and you can limit this as much as you want, but
Yeah.
do you have a couple of takeaways of things that they do that you really would like to try here in Urbana?
Well, I think the initiative to ensure that the majority of their students are developing as young bilinguals from which we're doing that in pockets, right, through our dual language programs, which are strand models in schools. So I think that was my biggest takeaway was the commitment to bilingualism for all, almost all, and us as a district taking steps further to ensure that for more students, and not just, I mean, it's about 500 to 600 students that are in our dual language programs, which is a good chunk of students, but we could do a lot more. And their approach is not necessarily doing it, they're doing it for all students no matter what the language background is of the student, and for the majority of the students that only speak Spanish, they're expecting bilingualism for them. So my takeaway is we should expect multilingualism for all of our students. Those who only speak English, those who come to school speaking both Spanish and English already, or French and English already, or whatever language background, racial background, socioeconomic background that students are coming from, we should have high expectations for bilingualism, multilingualism. That was my biggest takeaway, is how, as a policy initiative, can we implement that district-wide?
Great.
Yep.
I know there's a lot of barriers to that starting
Yeah.
up, but it would be great to see
Yeah.
that happen over time. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
if that
you.
becomes the norm, it would be a
It'd be
wonderful norm.
amazing,
Yep.
yeah. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right, other questions? Thanks, Joel.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Joel.
Moving on our agenda, we have a policy review, Press Plus, issue 95.
Yeah, so Press Plus 95 is actually very short. It's end of year. I will warn the board that we've already gotten kind of a heads up that Press Plus 96 is huge. That came out of the Joint Annual Conference in November, and they've also been putting out quite a few things about new laws that will be going into place very soon. So these three are pretty much just grammatical in nature. So I'll run through them real quickly for our viewing audience. 2:260, this is our uniform grievance procedure. They're changing the word procedure to policy to represent the fact that this is actually board policy and not administrative procedure. So that word is changed throughout. And just a reminder, the non-discrimination coordinator that's talked about in that grievance procedure is Assistant Superintendent Catherine Barber, and then the complaint managers are all three assistant superintendents, Catherine Barber, Samuel Bindum, and Todd Taylor. In 6:80, teaching about controversial issues, the IASB recommends, and we concur as an administrative team, that the sentence about student discipline be removed from the policy in order to keep the focus on teaching rather than have issues of student discipline being inserted into teaching and learning. And so there's one sentence that specifically talks about disruptive students in teaching about controversial issues, and we're taking that out. And then 6:120 is instructional materials. They literally moved the phrase age appropriate from the end of a sentence as a prepositional phrase to near the front of the sentence as an adjective describing materials, and that's for clarity. And then 8:70 is accommodating individuals with disabilities. ISB recommends adding the term website. This will be one that you will see in Press Plus 96 quite a bit, because there are changes to the interpretations of federal law on Americans with disabilities related to Title II. And so you'll see this fall out in a couple different areas in Press Plus 96. But basically it says that Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act applies to websites. Our website is fairly compliant with these recommendations already, in that if you go to our website and you roll over any of the images or clickable links, it'll actually pop up with a word description of where that link will take you. And then there's also a section on our website where you can translate it into other languages, and then it's also compliant with the rules needed if somebody has an add-on to their browser that allows for a translation of the website into a spoken word, our website is set up for that well. So we do a pretty good job with that, and I know that that's something that Joanne's been working on as we've been transitioning our website to a new environment as part of some of the tech issues that I talked about last time. The other thing that I'd like to say about this one is there is a new Public Act 100-554 that is going to bring about more changes to the policy 2260, which is uniform grievance procedures, as well as 5:20, which is workplace harassment. And so even though we have recommended changes coming through this time from IASB about the uniform grievance procedure, we will see that one come back again next month. Or actually, I should be careful. Press Plus 96 gets released in January. You probably won't be seeing it until February because of the size of it, it'll take us a little bit longer. These will come back to you for approval on December 19th.
Any questions? All right, let's move forward to our study topics this evening. And the first is the school-based health center.
Yes, and so as I said earlier, Jenny Dobb, who's the director of the School-Based Health Center, is going to review a little bit of the history as well as our current services and give you a little bit of information about that. And she's also joined, I don't know if Deb and Alicia are going to be presenting at all, but Deb and Alicia are from Champaign-Urbana Public Health District, and the partnership between Crossing Healthcare, which is basically the fiscal agent of the School-Based Health Center grant currently, and Champaign-Urbana Public Health has allowed us to expand dental services as well as mental health services over the years. So I'm going to let Jenny go through her presentation, and I think if you just pull the drawer on the top of the projector. Oh, got it.
Yeah, sorry, we didn't get our slides coordinated.
Got it.
So
Okay, so we just have this.
handouts, yes.
We're good.
All right, well, I'm Jenny Dobb. I'm the nurse practitioner over at the School-Based Health Center. And we, like Don said, just kind of wanted to present a little bit on what we do, what services we offer, and then some of the issues we've encountered in the last year and how we hope to overcome them. So first of all, a little bit of history. The School-Based Health Center has existed since 2004. We're on the north side of the high school by that Circle Drive, and we provide medical, mental health, and dental services to all students in the Urbana School District. So we start with early childhood and go up through adult education. Our services are provided through a partnership between Crossing Healthcare and the Champaign-Urbana Public Health Department. We do bill our patients for services, so if a patient has insurance, we do bill their health insurance or bill for the services, but we don't, patients are accepted into the clinic regardless of their ability to pay for services. So to help with funding, the Urbana School Health Center receives a grant from the Illinois Department of Public Health that helps with some of that funding. So Crossing Healthcare provides the medical and mental health services for the clinic. So I'm the nurse practitioner there, the main medical provider, and then Dr. Kohler is contracted to provide services through Francis Nelson 2 days out of the month. We also have counseling services through Crossing Healthcare. We usually have one full-time licensed clinical social worker seeing patients in the clinic, but our social worker resigned over the summer and we have not refilled that position yet. So currently we don't have any mental health services at the clinic. So the medical services we offer, first of all, we'd like for the clinic to be a medical home for these students. Since we do have medical, dental, and mental health, we can provide a lot of the health services that they need right there at the clinic. So if they don't have to go elsewhere for it, we'd like to be that one home for them. So in terms of medical services, we do a lot of physical exams, sports and school physicals. We do immunizations when we have them, which is a huge part of our services. We see kids for acute care issues. If a kid has a sore throat, they can come over to the health center and we can usually see them the same day on a walk-in basis. And then we also do follow kids with chronic health problems. So kids who have ADHD or asthma or issues with obesity, we can do weight management, counseling, things like that. We offer reproductive health services. So we do screening, prevention, treatment, testing. And we also see kids for sports-related injuries. And then also weight management. We used to have a dietitian that would come to the clinic 1 day a month. That's one of the services that's had to be put on hold this last year. But we hope at some point that we can get that service back in place as well, because it was a great service to the kids. A high percentage of our kids have a BMI that's over a healthy range. So we would like to get that back in place at some point if we can. So on the medical side, we see about 1,600 to 1,800 visits each year. And this last fiscal year, we saw 20% of the Urbana School District for medical visits in the clinic. Every medical patient that we see, they get a Bright Futures assessment, which is a global risk assessment tool. It's just kind of a questionnaire that we use to identify any area of risk that the kid might have in their life. We assess their home environment, their nutrition, if there's any violence or injuries in the household, their emotional well-being, so if they're having feelings of depression, if they're having thoughts of self-harm, and then also their health behavior choices. So are they doing drugs, drinking alcohol, are they sexually active? So we ask every patient all these questions on a yearly basis. So we identify a lot of need, which leads us to our mental health services. I strongly believe that every school-based health center needs mental health services to kind of go along with it. We identify such risk in these kids, and right there at the school, we're at such a great environment to provide care for that. So typically when we have a social worker in the clinic, she offers individual, group, and family counseling. And then when staffing allows, which it hasn't for the past couple years, but at some point, again, we'd like to see get back to the point where we're able to offer school-based counseling. We used to be able to go out into the elementary schools and service those kids, and we'd like to get back to that at some point too. So for mental health, they have about 1,000 visits each year. Our dental health services are provided through CU PhD. Currently, dental has services offered 2 days a week in the clinic. Dr. Adami is our dentist, and her assistant, Jennifer Boyd. And then Autumn Tapman is our hygienist, who offers services, again, 2 days a week right now. In the clinic, the services that are provided are exams, x-rays, cleanings, fluoride applications, sealants. They provide education on oral health, and they do fillings, root canals, crowns, and extractions. Dental also goes out into the schools to provide services, and the services that they provide in the schools are dental screenings, cleanings, fluoride applications, sealants, and again, oral health education. In fiscal year 2017, dental had 2,145 visits. 1,515 of those visits occurred in the Urbana School Health Center, and there were 1,163 individual students who were seen in the clinic. 109 of the students were new patients. And then they saw an additional 630 students out in the schools providing treatment. They did some case management that was able to reduce their no-show rate or their missed dental appointments by 14% since 2014. So it really helped them get kids to utilize the services that they were offering more efficiently. We try to have partnerships in the community for a couple different reasons. One, to make sure that we're providing up-to-date care and we're up to standards. And then also to meet our patients' needs. We have a large international population of the students that we see. And so we kind of like to keep partnerships with different places in the community so we can make sure we're meeting their needs, whether they're new to the country or have a communication issue that needs addressed. And then most of our outreach that we do at the clinic is through district events. We try to have a booth at centralized registration for the district, or back to school nights or open houses. And then the one that I like the most is our booth at Kindergarten Connection. I feel like if we can get those kids into the system and into the clinic and aware of our services when they're in kindergarten, then we can offer those services to them throughout the whole time that they're a student in the Urbana School District. We get public health interns through the clinic, and we try to have our public health interns present in health classes on various topics. We try to have walk-in sports physicals correlating with the beginning of each sports season. That way, if a kid waits till the last minute to get their sports physical, they're not necessarily held out of sports for the season. We can hopefully accommodate them. We have social media pages so that we can advertise our services, and then also so we can provide just educational materials. And then we also have a bulletin board at both the middle school and the high school. And that's kind of the same thing, just advertising our services, letting them know what we're here for. and then also providing some education to the kids at the same time. So there have been a lot of studies done on school-based health centers. There's been a lot of proof that they benefit the population and that there's a lot of good things that go along with school-based health centers. I can see a lot of them personally just through our school-based health center. There's reduced emergency room and urgent care visits when kids use school-based health centers. They have less transportation fees, which makes sense, and less pharmacy costs when they use school-based health centers. Kids miss school, less days of school, and then their parents miss less days of work when they use a school-based health center, which is great for everybody. They also found that students who use school-based health centers are more likely to seek treatment for reproductive health issues, or if they're having feelings of depression or thoughts of self-harm, they're more likely to talk to the staff at a school-based health center, which we definitely find firsthand that these kids tell us everything. So it's great. And then they also have increased use of mental health services. And again, I think part of that is because we do identify such risk in all those patients. Part of our, the grant that we get from the Department of Public Health kind of requires us to do this risk assessment. So it keeps us making sure we're identifying all of this risk. So it's nice that we can meet it, the need for it. So in the last year, we've had a few issues at the clinic that I'm sure you've heard of and why I am here to kind of talk about. So Crossing Healthcare is the one that manages medical and mental health, and they're located in Decatur. They have been thinking this past year that the Urbana School Health Center would benefit from local management and ownership, and so they've been kind of looking into that. And since we're kind of in a transitional phase, have made a few changes to the way the clinic's been operating. We think in the long term that this transition will be a good thing, that local ownership will benefit the clinic. However, in the short term, it's caused a few obstacles. So one is that Crossing has decided not to replace any of the vacant positions that have opened up in the health center, which unfortunately, since we're going through a transition, have been kind of a lot. So right now we have open positions are our mental health provider, our medical assistant, our front desk person, and our program coordinator.
Oh my.
So that's left a lot on my plate, which is great, but I have not been able to see as many patients as I typically would. It's taking away from my patient care time. So you'll see that our numbers have suffered a bit because of that. Typically this time, well, not this time of year, but in the fall, typically, for example, we will call patients in who have asthma. We'll do an asthma check in the fall because a lot of kids tend to have trouble in the fall. And then also because that's when flu vaccine comes out. So we can also give them their flu vaccine. Unfortunately, this year, due to staffing, we weren't able to call those kids back in. And then we also don't have immunizations right now, so we weren't able to give them their flu vaccines either. So it's kind of just one example of why our numbers are down a lot this year than what they usually are. We haven't had immunizations in the clinic since February, which again was a decision that Crossing made not to have vaccines in the clinic any longer. It's hard. Immunizations are expensive, and it becomes a liability if there's not a lot of staff available to respond if there's an issue. For example, if the power goes out, we like to have a list of 2 or 3 people that we can rely on to report and transfer the vaccines to somewhere that has power if need be. So right now, staffing just doesn't allow for that either. However, immunizations are also a requirement of our grant, so that is something that we definitely will get back in the clinic. It's just a matter of time. Our dietitian services we'd love to see back. I mentioned that earlier too, so that's one of the things that we would hope to see back in the future. And then we have a couple needs and issues that have existed since before this last year that we can quickly discuss. Parking is one of them. We only have 3 parking spots at the clinic, which I have 2 medical exam rooms. Dental has 2 operatories, and then we have mental health providing services at the clinic too. So our 3 spots can get taken up pretty quickly. That and then just space in the clinic too. Dental would love to have a 3rd operatory. It makes most sense financially for a dentist to have 2 hygienists working under that dentist, and then also for the dentist to be doing treatment at the same time. So they would love that, whereas right now we just have 2. So things like that have existed and continue to exist as well. So looking to the future, we anticipate the health center to do great again once we are under local ownership. It's just getting through this transition. Francis Nelson or Promise Healthcare has expressed interest in taking over local ownership and managing the grant. This would be a pretty smooth transition for us because Crossing Healthcare and Francis Nelson used to be one entity, and when they split apart, Dr. Kohler continued to provide services and continued to attend our staff meetings and just be a big part of how the clinic operates. So she knows the services we offer and what needs we have, and she would continue, she'd be our medical director under Francis Nelson as well. So that would be a pretty smooth transition. Prior to this last year, we saw our numbers staying stable, or if not, going up a little bit. So we anticipate if Francis Nelson were to take us over, our numbers would go higher probably, because there would be Francis Nelson out there now helping us spread the word. If they're booked out 2 months for a physical, oh, hey, you're an Urbana student, why don't you go see Jenny at the Urbana clinic? So we think it would only improve our numbers. So we're hopeful that this will be a good transition, and we'll be back to that in the long run. It's just getting through this year that's been a little rough. So I went ahead and included in the back of this handout our number of visits each month for the past 4 years. I wanted you to kind of see what was an average year for us, and then this year is on there too, so you can kind of see how things have changed for the year. So if you have any questions, I'm here for medical, and then we also have a couple of representatives from CPHD if you have any dental questions.
I have a couple, sorry. I was just going to ask you, I thought Francis Nelson is that ran by CU Public Health? Or how does that work?
They're separate entities, yes.
They are separate,
Yes.
okay, I was not sure about that.
Yeah.
So,
Nelson is part of Promise Healthcare. Right.
okay, thank you.
Use your mic.
About the mental health piece.
Yeah.
So with crossings, you're talking about self-harm. There are different contracts with each agency. So you have the low-income kids who are, get a lot of times diagnosed by SAS, who has a contract. So Crossings actually had a SAS contract, and then you have those that have a private contract for private insurances to be able to assess kids whose parents have private insurance. So you're saying Crossing was doing it both when you recognized a child had self-harm?
I
Or-
believe so. We'd have to ask our mental health specialist to be
Okay,
sure of
because-
exactly what process they used. But I know we did see kids who were uninsured, Medicaid, and private insurance, so we
Okay.
had
And that
policies for
one
those.
agency did it, Crossing? Okay.
Other questions?
Yeah,
Oh my God.
thank you for keeping the store running in times of
trying.
real these lean times. We really appreciate that. It's clear that when you mentioned the number of medical visits and healthcare visits and dental visits, that the dental visits are really the one that seems to be meeting the greatest number of needs in our district. And sometimes you said that those sometimes occur at the school, not at the health center, but at the school site.
They do.
How does that happen? How do they do cleanings like at an elementary school? I'm just practically.
Were you,
You have to come up and use
Oh, okay. Oh, I see, okay.
We have mobile dental equipment that goes into the schools, and so we take a dentist and 1 to 3 hygienists along with us.
Huh.
They're able to set up in a classroom or, a stage of the school, wherever they have that space
Wow.
for us. And we're able to see students whose parents have completed consents for us. So they are being able to get an exam, they're cleaning fluoride, and then we place dental sealants on the first and second permanent molars.
Wow.
Any of those students then that are found to have dental decay, our case manager contacts the family, and we also are we mail home and we send home with the student.
Huh.
And so we try to get them connected with the Urbana School Health Center
Wonderful.
through that.
So do you routinely then go to each elementary school? I
Yes,
mean,
we go to the, this week we're at Urbana Early Childhood and Williams. We do those both together. And we go to all of the elementary schools and then the middle school as well. The only school that we aren't physically going to is the high school, but we're connected to the high school.
and so every family knows that they can access those services when they're at their school. Anybody can, as long as they let you know and they have the proper
Yes.
release and all that. That's
Yes.
wonderful. I did not know that.
And Alicia, could you talk just a little bit about how much time that is out of class to do that?
When a student is brought out of class, they are only out of class about 15 to 20 minutes. We're able to do this quicker than, say, if you were going to go to your dentist and you may have a 40-minute to an hour-long visit. A lot of that time is spent waiting for providers in, where we're able to get that child into a chair. We do the exam and then cleaning and all the sealants within about 20 minutes out of class.
Wow.
If they are waiting, for a chair to come open to them, we have someone doing oral health education with them, talking about brushing.
That's wonderful. Could I ask just one other question? You know, when, Jenny, when you mentioned that how many medical visits we have, and that in fiscal year 16-17, 20% of Urbana School District students utilized medical services. Why just 20%? I mean, is that just unique this past year because we've been so understaffed?
Well, no, well, that is the number for this last year, so that's a little bit part of it, although 20 to 25% I think is our typical percentage that we see. Part of it, I think, is that we don't do a lot of advertising necessarily. We get out as much as we can, outreach through through the district events, but we haven't done a whole lot other than that, which is why we think having local ownership would be helpful. That would help with that. And then also, I think, too, we need, we have a decent amount of paperwork to get through on that first visit, and sometimes it can be difficult to get the parent in on that first visit.
Gotcha.
So I don't know if that's unique to medical, but.
Yeah.
Jenny, one thing that is maybe not unique to medical, but I think is unique to the way it is currently set up. Could you talk just a little bit about the fact that if a student is a patient at the Urbana School-Based Health Center, that doesn't necessarily mean that their medical record can travel, even though we have electronic records and et cetera, they're not necessarily a patient at Pbis or any of the other local hospitals. Could you talk just a little bit about that?
Correct. So since we are owned by Crossing Healthcare, we use their electronic health record. So Francis Nelson can't access our records. We would have to fill out a medical record release, just like you were if you were going from Carl to Christie or vice versa. And then we send their records. Yeah. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Okay.
So local ownership or local management would make that process much easier for students and families.
It would make
Yeah.
that process easier, and it would make sharing patients between us and Francis Nelson a little bit easier. Right now, we kind of provide services to the same population of kids, and it's hard if Dr. Kohler doesn't have an opening at the school-based health center for 2 months, but she has an opening next week at Francis Nelson. It's difficult not to tell our patients, hey, just go over there and see her, but we really can't because the health records are different and we're different organizations. But if we were under the same ownership, it'd be a lot easier to kind of coordinate care better. And then we'd have better resources for referral. We could refer within our own system instead of always referring outside of our system. So.
And one of the things is when we did partner with Francis Nelson, those kids that are in college, their records did travel to Francis Nelson. So Francis Nelson didn't put them on a wait list, said, come on, you got to have your physical and this. So I'm really excited about you all. I'm hoping that this works out with Francis
there could be a lot
Nelson.
of benefits to it.
Yeah.
We definitely see the benefits of local ownership. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think one of the biggest benefits for all is parents who do use the health services, they do not have to take off work.
Yeah.
A staff member from the middle school and the high school I know well, mainly the middle school, will walk them over there. And the high school, I believe they're responsible enough
Correct.
to show up themselves if there is an issue. And that's a big plus for a lot of families, because I know several people who really do not have the time or cannot afford to take off work to get their children the services that they need. And that has been a real plus for several families.
Yes,
Yeah.
that, and we send passes. So the middle school gets a list of the kids that we need walked over that day. So even if their parent forgets that they had a school physical that day, they still get walked over and we still do it. And
Oh,
so
that's
they still
wonderful.
get that appointment.
Yeah, and
Wow.
I think just letting the parents know by following up with them also is very important.
Yes, we do. And they always get reminder calls. So even if their child does get walked over, they've hopefully been notified. And yes, we send a patient plan with every patient too that has my contact information if they have any questions. So, yeah.
And you also set the position for in the mental health field. December, you have a lot of graduates coming out in the field of psychology and mental health. So are you attacking them now to let them know, because they're looking for jobs?
We're not really, since it's not an open position.
Okay.
But hopefully we will be soon.
Okay.
Paul?
Is there a time frame you're looking at for establishing local ownership of?
I think we're supposed to hear within the next month if Francis Nelson is interested or not.
Yeah,
So-
we've had some preliminary discussions with Francis Nelson and their board is in the process of examining the options for them. And so it's a little premature to get into a lot of speculation, but they are talking about it. I wanted to make sure that our board was aware that those talks are going on. And yes, I would say on the optimistic side, in the next month or so, we will definitely be updating the board as any developments take place, so that you know. And if you have questions about how this transition might work, please let me know, and Jenny and I can address those questions.
So for new board members, when we established the clinic, it was a local network and Francis Nelson was involved. But Francis Nelson went through evolutions that brought in the Decatur group, and then, so there was Francis Nelson, then there was a new Francis Nelson with Decatur, with Chick, and then they split, and Francis Nelson is now local. So moving back to, I hate to call it ownership, I think it's more management.
Yes.
Because the clinic has been community-based, school-based, but community ownership-based since its inception. And it's just a matter of they needed a responsible fiscal agent, and at one time, Francis Nelson Public Health District and Carl and Presence, and it was a kind of a coalition that were in charge of it, and Francis Nelson provided the fiscal, and then it became, that board was disbanded, and Francis Nelson came back into existence under Chick sponsorship, and now they're separate, and now this is more or less a restoration of where we were in 2004. And I think it goes a lot better, because then it's not just within Francis Nelson and Public Health, but it also allows for closer ties with the major medical providers in the community as well. So,
I just have one more question. I'm curious, are we able to provide this great array of services, like the school health, dental visits, and all the other things we do, because of this grant we have? Or do you also provide, for example, the dental services in other school districts?
We do the Champaign School
Oh,
District
okay.
as well. We also have, at the Public Health District, we have a six operatory clinic
Gotcha.
there.
Oh, okay.
And we see a good number of Urbana students there. The reason that they are there, go there, is because we have the WIC program there, and they have younger siblings.
Oh,
And
okay.
so if they're going there for WIC, it's easier to do all that. But as soon as their kids, we're always encouraging them, when we see they're from Urbana, do you realize this is
Yeah.
right here? So at some point, they finally end
Gotcha.
up here. And because we share, the records are shared back and forth, if they need an appointment on a day other than when we're there, they can be seen in Urbana.
Uh-huh.
We're digital x-ray too, so we
Sure.
can bring up the x-rays that are taken.
Wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
we're very
Same
lucky.
with medical. There's health centers that exist in schools that don't have any funding, that just operate based on billing their patients and their Medicaid, or their, and medical insurance for the
Gotcha.
visits too.
Gotcha,
So
okay.
it helps, for
Yeah.
sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wonderful, well, thank you.
And to make it economically viable, they do need a larger patient load than what they've got.
Yes.
And so.
Than
the-
what we have this year, for sure.
Yes, and so the role that this board plays is that because it's an Urbana school-based, Urbana school district-based health facility, we have a lot of say in what the universe of patients are that they could draw from. And so there may be, as discussions proceed, don't be too surprised if this comes back to us with some thinking on our part needed as to making sure that there's an adequate patient base to make it financially viable. So,
For example, and I'll just give, because Dr. Bynum and I have had several conversations about this over the years, the way the agreement was originally set up and the way back in 2004 is when it started, but when the discussions were happening earlier than that, it was designed for early childhood through 12th grade and didn't include adult education students. And so, you know, that to me is an easy win that I would think would not only increase the patient base, but also have a huge impact on a larger Urbana community. And then there are other things that we could discuss as well, but I agree with John. I think that those will be topics that will come back to you sooner than later and will require some board discussion and board action because there are certain things in the original agreement as well as in the lease that we might want to revisit in order to not only sustain but also kind of enhance and accelerate the impact of the school-based health center.
and part of this will just be part of Francis Nelson trying to analyze how best they can provide the services. And we need to be open-minded when they come to us and just not say that, well, just because we did it that way in 2004, that's the way it needs to be. Healthcare has changed a lot in the last 23, 25 years, so we need to be about that. So be ready to learn something about healthcare. All right, anything else? Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
you.
Yeah,
13 years?
14 years, yeah.
Oh,
2004.
13,
Yeah.
13.
I was like, we didn't miss a big anniversary.
No,
or,
13 years,
yeah.
13 years, sorry. Didn't do the math in my head correctly tonight.
Thank you,
13
Jenny and
years.
Alicia.
All right.
And Deb, thank you. all.
We're now ready to, for our main study topics this evening, which is school improvement plans for King and Thomas Paine.
Yeah. So
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Christina Kale-Lewandowski will be our first principal to present for the school improvement plan for Dr. Martin Luther King.
Okay.
First.
All right. Well, good evening.
Good evening.
And I am Christina Kale-Lewandowski, principal of Dr. Martin Luther King Elementary School. And it is my pleasure to be here tonight to present our school improvement plan. So why are we here? That is a question that I often ask staff, and I often ask myself. And so this is why we're here. Our mission at King School is to help our students develop the skills and the knowledge necessary to make responsible life choices and positive contributions in a diverse society. In collaboration with home and community, we will respond to the needs of every student, ensuring that each child can and will learn. So that is why we are here. So when developing our goals, we created 2 goals. And so here's our first goal. King students will be able to read fiction and nonfiction complex texts at their appropriate level, thus ultimately helping students perfect their writing in 3 different genres, and that is in narrative, opinion, and in information writing. So that is our goal number 1. And so we had to look at what is our current reality. So as of now, where do we stand? And so 51% of students in grades 1 through 5 are currently on level, and 41% of kindergartners are on level in regards to literacy. So our goal by May 2018 to have 80% of students in grades 1 through 5 at or above grade level, and the same for kindergarten by May 2018 to have 80% of our kindergartners at literacy level. And so the question is, what specifically are our students struggling in the area of writing? So one of the things is just brainstorming their own writing topics. Having writing just come to them, and they're having trouble starting that process. Also summarizing what they read. So after they read something, can they retell what they read? Expanding on their ideas. So we call that elaboration. So a story is just not one sentence. So you have to elaborate. You have to provide us details. Finding appropriate sources and information. Being able to independently write. So after the teacher provides that mini lesson and says, okay, students, go ahead and go back to your seats or go to your tables and go ahead and start writing, students struggle. Some of them just sit there. So that was one of our struggles too. How do we get them to independently write? And then also developing a main idea that is consistent throughout their writing. What's interesting when you read little ones writing is that they may have full paper, but it's like 4 different topics. So how do you get them to stick to one topic throughout the story? So what we did was we provided what's called an on-demand in our first genre that we decided to teach, and that was in the area of narrative writing. And so what you see here is an example of our pre-assessment data. And what I'd like to pass around is an example of a kindergarten rubric. And so just to give you an idea of how the teachers graded it. So to explain the graph, okay, so I'm going to try this out here. Oh, great. All right, so if you look at the scale scores, in kindergarten, they can get a 1 all the way to actually a 4, but I just included 3.5. But if you look at how many students, kindergartners, scored a 53, that was a score of 2. So I just want to take a minute and explain that. So, and you'll be able to see the rubric going around. So in order for a kindergartner to at least score 2, they simply just had to draw a picture. Can they draw a picture? And can they write something? Okay? So we want them not to be here. We want them to be here, which is the 3.5. Okay, so that's where we want them to be. And at the beginning of the year, we had 53 students that were able to draw a picture and have at least a label or a word. And so that's where we're at. Now in first grade, we had 23 students score a 1. And as you can see, what we want are these bars up. This is what we want. And then if you look at the next grade level, second grade, we had 14 students score 1, 8 students score 2, and then you could keep going. Third grade, the most was 19 students scoring a 1. Fourth grade, the most was 19 students scoring a 1.5. And then fifth grade, the most 20 students scoring a 1. Okay? So we have a lot of work to do. So in the area of reading, the struggles were comprehension, fluency, and decoding skills. And so when we looked at our data, when the students arrived, we assessed them right away. And we used what's called a Fountas and Pinnell measurement. And basically, it's just a reading record type of measurement. And so kindergartners, you don't see a bar here because they don't get tested at the beginning of the year in regards to Fountas and Pinnell reading records. Now, if you look at first grade, again, red is bad, okay? So we want blue to be higher than the red. So we only had 4 first graders at or level, and then you can keep going. So we always want the blue higher than the red. And so we found that in 4th grade, 34 students were below benchmark, with only 22 students at or above level.
So is this your starting point in a given school year, and then you expect
Correct.
to change? Okay.
As a matter of fact, we are assessing, all elementary schools as we speak are in the middle of assessing this very assessment. And I was told by my interventionist that I'll be able to look at the spreadsheet December 11th, because I asked today, is the spreadsheet ready? Is the spreadsheet ready? So she told me, December 11th, Ms. Lou. Okay, December 11th. So, okay, next one. So we came up with an action plan and measurement. So how are we going to increase the areas of reading and writing? And so these were some of our big ideas, big points. Look at close reading of fiction and nonfiction text. And when we do that, we want to be able to have students, after they read, ask them a question, and they're able to retrieve that information from the text and cite their evidence, support their ideas with the evidence and what they read. Strengthening conferring techniques, one-on-one throughout the unit. When you provide students with effective feedback, that's like the #1 way to increase student achievement. That is very important. I recently collected all of the teachers' conference logs. I call them writing conference logs. And when you do that, you're, as the administrator, I'm able to really see my 307 kids. Okay, this is where junior started, and these are how many points, data points the teacher took. That was her formative assessment way of saying, okay, junior, you're still missing elaboration. You're still missing dialogue. You need to include transition words. You need to include an ending. You have all these different topics in one paper. So that's why it's important that we frequently look and monitor students' work. And then we are collecting their work and putting in the data so we can evaluate and look at and analyze the data. We have Miss Jill Dayhart that comes over. She's our partner at the University of Illinois. She is so valuable, so knowledgeable in the area of writing, and she meets with my teachers twice a month during that very, very special collaboration time. And it's professional development at its best. And we also are working on racial equity professional development. We're doing a lot of work to decrease the disparities between subgroups. And then we are also working on, we're implementing guided reading, and not just guided reading, but guided writing groups as well. So that's very important. Oh, let me go back. So then what are our overall desired results? If I were to have one wish from a genie, what would I want? This is what we would like. All King students will increase their reading comprehension and become fluent readers and writers, because we know as they become better writers, they become better readers. And so the next slide, I just want to give a quick example. So this is a 5th grader, and I'm so glad that the teacher had the student put the date on there. So then that's just, it says 8/28/17. So that was the first time. And as you can see, wonderful title, right? And then wonderful, she remembered to indent. But as you can see, it's just one kind of, okay, and that's it, right? Now let's look at the next page. So now we have such an improvement, and this was, maybe I cut off the date, but this was recently, like, the post-assessment was 11/28, I believe. And so now you can see this is the same fifth grader. And so now we have a beginning paragraph. We have a lead sentence. Have you ever been to a trampoline park? Question mark. And so on. And then as you can see, she still has a little indentation there. And then, so it's just organized, as you can see there. So what a fantastic improvement. And then let's go, okay, and then I wanted to show another example, and I'll pass this around. So that's an intermediate example. Here's an example of a second grader, all right? So this second grader was given the assessment, and, you know, we all know we write with these holes, you know, on the left side. This student started the paper like this.
Yeah.
So this is his picture, and I'll pass it around, like I said, but it's about football. And again, it was narrative. So write something about a small moment in your life. So he loves football, and he talked about playing with his mom and dad. So what he wrote underneath there was, and mom watching football with my dad. Okay? So he went from here to here, okay, to then writing a lot more. So yay, growth.
Yeah.
That's what we want. And so I'll just pass that around like this. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. So that was a second grader. And so, of course, we have a lot more work to do. So I'm really excited we're making progress. So now let's talk about goal 2. Students will develop social and emotional skills that will help to improve academic progress and behavior. So what is our current reality? Our Pbis data shows that in the areas of physical aggression, disruption, and disrespect, that those are our top 3 concerns in the areas of behavior. And then as far as where are these actions happening? Classroom, playground, and library. So we came up with a plan. And so these were the big ideas that we came up with. So we want to implement learn self-regulation skills. So basically we want the child to self-advocate for themselves. We want to teach them strategies that will not make them angry, that will help them make better choices. We want them to participate in restorative circles. That helps with reflection, that gets the staff member involved, and it helps resolve problems. It really works. So I wanted to just give an example of our King Elementary Pbis matrix, which is located all in the hallways, in every classroom, and taught throughout the school year. Appropriate behavior in every location. And some other examples. So every kid wants to be cool, right? So be cool at King Elementary School. And how do you do that? By doing 4 steps. So if a kid doesn't like something that you're wearing and they make fun of you, here's something you can do. So this is what we teach the kids. I do not like it when you make fun of the clothes I wear. It makes me feel sad. Please stop. If you do not stop, I will tell an adult. So that is an example of trying to make a kid self-advocate. And then if we have any type of bullying behavior, we want to keep the peace. So we say to the person, stop, walk. So in other words, walk away, and then talk. Or you could talk it out or talk to an adult. So that's another strategy that we're teaching. And some other big ideas. Staff members will receive racial training equity to target behavior and communication misconceptions of our students. Often review the Pbis data and our refocus room data to identify who are the students who are needing more redirection than other students. And let's create some goals for those students. Consistently implement Tier 1, and we are working on second step, which is a curriculum about social emotional standards, which is a terrific curriculum, class meetings daily, and Pbis initiatives daily. Provide families with social emotional learning strategies in our quarterly newsletter. And so there are times where we invite the families in and they're asking for help. Another example, at our recent family reading night for our parents, there were books about parenting. And I thought, oh, that'd be a really good prize. And I was even looking at them, oh, let me have one of those books. But yeah, definitely having resources for our parents is very important because they do ask for help. So what are our desired results? What do we want at the end? We want to increase the amount of instructional time for the child. We don't want the child out of the classroom. We want them to stay in the classroom. We want to decrease the overall number of students receiving discipline referrals, in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, and in the refocus room. We want to reduce the disparities in the referral data, and then we want staff to improve the climate and culture by fostering equitable practices. And that is all. That concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Questions, board members?
Oh, it's very comprehensive. No, I appreciate all the detail.
Just going back to the initial reading assessment you had in phase one, was that a new assessment this year?
The reading one is it's not new.
So
It's-
I was kind of curious how our numbers this year then compare to prior years.
To mine personally, or maybe the district?
Well, no, I meant for King. Is the are the numbers comparable to last year? Are we sliding back, or are we showing growth from
That
year to
is a
year?
very good question. I wouldn't know the answer to how King started, like in the fall. I don't know the answer to that. But we do have the data for the May, and so I could look that up and get back to you on that for last year.
Go ahead.
On the psychosocial, you were talking about the book you're using for them?
For
is
the
that,
social emotional, stay in a second step curriculum.
Was there some evidence-based research that said that would work with those children?
Most definitely.
Okay. And what's the name? Second Step? Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you
Anything
very
else?
much.
Thank you.
you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Dolores Lloyd. I'm the principal at Thomas Paine Elementary, and so I'll bring up our presentation for you. Okay, so just like Mrs. Lewandowski talked about, one of the things we focus on is what are we here for as well at Thomas Paine. And so our mission at Thomas Paine is to foster active engagement in the learning process, to nurture students' unique qualities, and to empower students to become self-directed individuals devoted to making a positive impact on their community, the country, and the world. And so as we looked at identifying what our goals were going to be, literacy is very important, and so our first goal is to focus on literacy. So our goal is all students will make progress toward meeting and or exceeding grade level expectations in the area of literacy. And so when I say literacy, I'm referring to both reading and writing because they go hand in hand. So as I looked at our data, our current reality is at grades 1st through 5th grade, we have the following. I looked at raw numbers rather than percentages, and so 116 students are reading one or more grade levels below, and that's 1st grade through 5th grade. 26 students are reading one grade level below. That's related to the Pbis assessment. Again, same literacy assessment that Mrs. Lewandowski talked about. And 115 students in grades 1st through 5th read at or above grade level at Thomas Paine. When I looked at our kindergarten data, 25 out of our 46 kindergartners are on level. And so when I refer to on level, that speaks to students who know 21 or more combined letters, capital letters, lowercase letters, and 8 to 10 sounds. So for our Pbis assessment, this particular graph kind of shows you just the information I shared with you. So in first grade, we have 24 students that are at or above level. So the blue is at or above for each grade level here. The red bar represents the students that are just one Pbis level, and that's one of the literacy levels below grade level. The yellow here represents those students in each grade level who are one grade level below, and the green are those students who are 2 grade levels below for 1st through 5th grade. I then went further and kind of broke the data down based on racial identity. And this is only the number of students that are below, according to our Pbis data, in each grade level. So for students who are unspecified, that means they haven't identified a specific racial category. These are the numbers we have. So in first grade are your blue for each of the racial groups. Second grade, so as you see here, second grade, our white students, we have 18 out of all the white students in second grade that are below level. Here for our black students, we have 13 black students in first grade that are below when you look at the group as a whole. And this particular data is categorized as above on grade level or below grade level. So that's what the scale is. I've only given you the data for the students that are below. And so when I take a look at what our action plan is as we're moving forward, we're going to focus, we've been focusing on teachers engaging in professional development in the area of writing. And again, our focus was writing because reading and writing go hand in hand. As you work on the writing, the reading is coupled right along with it. They pair. And so we also decided to work with teachers to support students in reading across the curriculum, which will increase the amount of interaction with text and across curriculum with social science as well as science and reading and writing in the areas of math, with a focus on being culturally responsive with our practices. So students are having the opportunity to write about a variety of things and bringing in their personal experiences. Teachers will collaborate with colleagues to provide additional literacy instruction throughout the day. And so as we move toward what that kind of looks like, so teachers are having an opportunity to work with the coaches, to provide cycles, to support them in resources as well as the process. So they get a chance to grow as well. So they're going to grow professionally in each of the areas as they're working on research, collaborating, and providing one another feedback to support student growth. Students are interacting and exploring a variety of texts, a variety of genres throughout the day. And this also increases that opportunity to collaborate so that we can also have students working on specific topics or themes that couple with in library, for example. So a librarian can pull resources and also provide instruction during library time. Students will have multiple opportunities to engage in a variety of model texts to support literacy growth in reading and writing. So what happens here is students will actually get to see model text, and so they get to see sentence structures that they can now apply to their own writing pieces. Our desired results is that all students become fluent readers and writers who can read complex text and write for a variety of purposes across the curriculum. So the second goal that we're focusing on at Thomas Paine is staff using universal language and procedures to enhance social emotional learning as it relates to improving the school culture for all students. And one other thing I wanted to add to that. Nope, that's not it. So when we look at our current reality, our discipline data for the 2016, 2017 school year, we had 994 referrals total. Now, what I decided to do is look at the beginning of the year, kind of where we are now from August 2016 to November 2016, so that we had comparable data to compare. And so in 2016, there were 355 referrals. This year, from the same time frame, August to November, this data ended on November 25th, there were 233 referrals. So we're down 122 referrals in the same time period. And what I hypothesized was the inconsistent language, procedures, and directives that are used to redirect or reward and to reprimand students. Students therefore engaged in inappropriate behaviors in an effort to seek attention. You know, a lot of the behaviors we identify students wanting attention and not caring what kind of attention it is that they're getting. So our action plan is to increase students' time within the instructional day. And the way we're going to do that is support the self-regulation skills to reduce the number of behaviors that have led to disciplinary consequences. We've engaged in a book study with the book entitled Opening Minds Using Language to Change Lives. And this book study has allowed us to collaborate and use a working document to develop phrases to use to provide students feedback, ask questions, and also to kind of shift the narrative so that they're focusing more on a growth model rather than thinking SMART is either you are or you are not. SMART is something you become as you persevere. And so the belief that goes along with, that's brought out in this book is called dynamic language frames. And so I'll share with you the working document that we're using as well. Another action plan is to extend our social emotional curriculum using restorative practices and circles. Students are having the opportunity to communicate, to problem solve, and to identify how to restore the harm. So they're taking responsibility for their actions. And it becomes a process of learning rather than punitive. Did I miss something? Yeah. So some of the measurements that we've used to identify you know, our baseline, and then moving forward, the difference that implementation of our goals have made are observations. So we're using language in the classroom by both the teachers and the students. Student interactions, seeing the way students talk to each other and reference things. Surveys by both teachers and students. We also use our Swiss data, which is where the discipline data comes from, the number of referrals, what those referrals are for, and then culture and climate surveys. So oh wait, sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I would like to go back.
The dynamic learning.
And can I bring up, oh, I can't. I will share with you because I just realized that one of my slides is missing in this.
The dynamic learning frame, yeah. That's
Yes,
kind of interesting,
yes.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. I'm glad you have that. Okay. So I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, no, it looks interesting. I was thinking,
So I'm glad you have that. So to take a look at our dynamic learning frames here. As you see, there's two categories, because I don't have it on this slide in this PowerPoint. Yeah, it's not in here. So if you want to take a look at it, we have the phrases, you have questions that you can ask students. Then it also offers feedback that you can provide students so that they can think more in a growth model. It's not that you can or you can't do it, it's you can't do it yet. So it's more of that progressive kind of thinking. If I continue to persevere, I'm going to get it. All right. So then I'll go from there. Back to my presentation. So I'm glad you have it. So-
I really liked on your feedback column, you are growing new brain cells when you blank,
Yes.
blank, blank.
Yes.
Good to remind you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then if you notice that the bottom part too, something for teachers to ponder, always think about, like, everything that we do impacts our students. And so it's so important that we realize that what we say and do has a tremendous impact on their lives. So when we look at our desired results, we're going to be working in partnership with teachers, students to take control of their learning, because students have to understand that they are in charge of their learning. They have an impact on how much their actions do impact their growth. Students attend to their internal feelings of accomplishments to build their sense of agency and foster internal motivation. Kind of goes right back to that dynamic learning frame of thinking. The teachers and staff will engage in a professional growth while modeling the expected behavior for students. The positive culture and climate, that shift is definitely something we're wanting to foster, and increasing the social and academic outcomes for all of our students so that students are applying their skills and the strategies so that they can learn to respond appropriately to challenging situations, because students always have to think about how to problem solve in every situation. And so, are there questions?
Any questions?
I have one. So in the problem solving, are you doing cognitive behavior therapy along with it, or are you just doing the problem solving, especially the ones that maybe some of the other practices aren't working? Because for the psychosocial at that age, they said that if you combine those two together, that would help. So have you all been doing, or are you just now concentrating on just the problem solving?
So we have some restorative chats, and so
Okay,
students
that's a
process,
good one.
yes.
That's
So
good
they are
cognitive.
processing.
Okay. Okay. And I just want to say, I'm hearing good things about you because you are also addressing these behaviors by approaching the parents. And then I've seen you in the community asking for specialists to come in
Oh, yes.
and talk with the parents. So I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
I just want to ask, the dynamic learning frame phrases, I mean, it does look, really useful. Does that come from that book study, The Opening Minds?
Yes.
Book, okay, so
It
that's something that the staff engage in as a staff? I mean, this sort of book group?
Yes, the entire staff. When I
Okay.
say entire staff, I mean also our TAs. And so one of the things that we've had conversations about is everybody in the building is a teacher.
Yeah.
And so,
I like that. Yeah, thank you.
mhm.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Well,
very
thank you
much.
so much. It
Thank
was
you
a
both,
pleasure
yeah.
to share our plan with you.
Thank you both.
We have no call for any future special or executive. Moving on, next on our agenda is, there is no call for future or special or executive meetings, and we're ready for the superintendent's report.
Yeah, I just had one quick thing, and then I'm going to pass over to Carol. Last time I mentioned Mr. J.C. Caroline and Ms. Renee Renfro, and at today's Rotary meeting of the Urbana Rotary, if you remember, we've talked about the Red Shoe Fund that specifically goes to benefit social workers. The Red Shoe Fund today was dedicated in the name of Renee Renfro, and that was very nice, and there was a little bit of a challenge that was put out there, and I believe that they had over $480-some raised with the Red Shoe, which is about 3 or 4 times what a regular Tuesday is at the Urbana Rotary. So I was very pleased with that, and a lot of Rotarians were there, and many of them knew Renee from her activities in the community or her work in social work. So Carol's going to talk just a little bit about the work that we've been doing with the city of Urbana on Washington School and where that process is.
Yes, I just wanted to give the board advance notice that at the December 19th business meeting, we're going to be bringing for board approval the rezoning for Washington to an R4 zoning, as well as an amendment to the comprehensive plan. That's something that the city is going to require. The board to pass it, it's going to go to the city. The city will have a public hearing to notify the neighborhood, do a public notice, and then have the hearing. But as we've spoke about, we think the R4 zoning is probably the most advantage for that neighborhood. It's the most, that ties into the neighborhood. It allows both single-family duplex, townhome, zero lot line, or even a small apartment building. So we think doing this ahead of time will help as far as developing this property, and to let, have this already been approved, a developer coming in will know that they don't have to go through those hoops. So this is just a formality that we have to go through this with the city, and just wanted to give you a heads up that'd be coming your way next meeting.
Great.
Any questions?
December 19th.
Okay, last thing for my superintendent's report. I'm notifying the board, and I'll put this in writing too, but I'm actually taking vacation days starting this Friday, and I will be gone through next Tuesday. And so I just want to let you know I'll be, yes, taking a long weekend going up to Minnesota. Primarily vacation, but I'm also going to be visiting a French immersion school in the St. Paul Public Schools that our director of elementary bilingual programs made a connection with at a conference. And I worked my way into a little tour and with their principal and director of language programs.
Excellent.
All right. Board reports.
I just wanted to mention a couple provisions in the tax bill that's being debated in Washington, and they were ones that I was not aware of until today, that affect public education, and I just wanted to share those because they might be new to you too. You know, as people know, the House and Senate are now conferencing, trying to come up with a single version of the tax bill, but there's 2 or 3 provisions that would seriously harm public education. The one that I just learned about today is that both House and Senate versions allow families to divert up to $10,000 per year in taxable dollars to pay for K-12 private school tuition. So it's really a shifting of public dollars for private school tuition, and that's in both versions. Both versions also dramatically lower the federal deduction for state and local taxes, making it tougher to raise funds for public schools because we rely very much on those. And the House version, this is a small thing, but the House version eliminates the tax credit for teachers to buy school supplies. So we're all encouraged to call our U.S. senators and congressmen. And it's easy to do. You can call it after hours and leave a message on their answering machine. I mean, I find that to be really easy because during the day you get lots of busy signals. But at night, they all have message machines. You can leave a long message, say everything you need to say, and, calls to Washington are very cheap. So anyway, those are important provisions. Yeah.
Peggy, can I ask you real quick, those provisions are in both sides, in both the House and the Senate?
Yes, right, the $10,000.
They've both agreed on those, oh, wow, okay.
Right. And I hadn't heard that until today. That was, I think there's a lot of, minor details that haven't been made public until just today.
I don't think some were made public to their own members.
Yeah, possibly so too. So I think, we need to let our elected officials know what is not okay.
Other board reports? Hearing none, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. We're adjourned.